Hello, I'm going to discuss about non-tariff barriers, quantity control. To enable to understand better, I give the difference about tariff and non-tariff. A tariff is a tax on imports or exports between sovereign states, form of regulation of foreign trade policy that taxes foreign products to encourage or safeguard domestic industry. It is also used by the state as a source of income, and while non-tariff is not involving a tax or duty, non-tariff is any obstacle to international trade that is not an import or export duty. Let's go now to the types of non-tariff barriers. So non-tariff barriers may include any policy measures other than tariffs that can impact trade flows. So they can be quotas, voluntary export restraint or VIR, embargoes, by local legislation, standard and levels, specific permission requirements, administrative delay, reciprocal requirements, and its counter trade, and lastly, restrictions on services and its essentiality, not for profit services, standards, and immigration. Let's go first to quotas. The quota is the most common type of quantitative import or export restriction, limiting the quantity of a product that can be imported or exported in a given time frame, typically per year. So quota may set the total amount of to be traded or and allocate amounts by country, limiting the export and import in the country. So next is voluntary export restraint. A variation of quota is the so-called voluntary export restraint or VIR. Essentially, a country A asks country B to voluntarily reduce its company's exports to country A. VIR or voluntary export restraint is where two countries make an agreement to limit their exports to one another each year. Next is embargoes. A specific type of quota that prohibits all trade is an embargo. As with quotas, countries or groups of countries may place embargoes on either imports or exports on whole categories of products regardless of origin or destination, on specific products with specific countries, or on all products with given countries. So embargo is used by the government as an effort to use economic means to achieve political goals. So next is by local legislation, another form of quantitative trade control. Government purchases a large part of total expenditures in many countries. Typically, governments favor domestic producers. The binational and other government policies. So, through by local laws, government can purchases give preference to domestically made goods, and governments sometimes legislate a percentage of domestic content. And then standards and labels. Countries can devise classification, labeling, and testing standards to allow the sale of domestic products but obstruct foreign made ones. So, the purpose of these standards and labels is to protect the safety or health of the domestic population. But some companies are argued they are just a means to protect domestic producers. Next is specific permission requirements. Some countries require that potential importers or exporters secure governmental permission. An import or export license before transacting trade is that a company may have to submit a samples to government authorities to obtain such a license. And a foreign exchange control is similar to specific permission requirements. It requires an important importer to apply to a government agency to secure the foreign currency to pay for the product. So there are other types of trade barriers include arbitrary standards, licensing arrangements, administrative delays, reciprocal requirements, service restrictions. And we have here administrative delays akin to specific permission requirements, same, are intentional administrative customs delays or those caused by inefficiency, create uncertainty, and raise the cost of carrying inventory. These administrative delays, and also intentional delays, may occur not only to protect domestic producer but also for political reasons. Next is reciprocal requirements. Because of government regulations in the importing countries, exporters sometimes must take merchandise or buy services in lieu of receiving cash payment. Reciprocal requirements means that exporters must find markets for goods outside their lines of expertise, engage in complicated organizational arrangement that require them to relinquish some operating control or undertake activities outside their expertise. And here have counter trade or offsets are government requirements in the importing country whereby the exporter, usually in sales, especially military ones, to a foreign government must provide additional economic benefits such as jobs or technology as part of the transaction. So we have here the restrictions on services. There are four main reasons why trade in services is restricted because of essentiality, preference for not-for-profit operations, standards, and immigration. Essentiality, judge judge certain services industries to be essential because they serve strategic purposes or provide social assistance to citizens. Essentiality, they set price controls or subsidize government-owned service organizations that create disincentives for foreign private participation. Not-for-profit services like mail, education, and hospital health services are often not-for-profit sectors in which new foreign firms compete. When a government privatizes these industries, it customarily prefers local ownership and controls. Not-for-profit services are the government-owned and controlled services. Next is standards. The licensing standards for this personnel vary by country. There is little reciprocal recognition in licensing from one country to another because occupational standards and requirements differ substantially. So standards are the sometimes require services that require to face interaction between professionals and clients. These were the times that firms must hire professionals within each foreign country or else try to earn certification abroad. So lastly, the immigration, the last restriction of services is that satisfying the standards of a particular country is no guarantee that a foreigner can then work there. In addition, governmental regulation often require an organization, domestic or foreign, to search extensively for qualified personnel locally before it can even apply for work permits for personnel it would like to bring in from abroad. We put this immigration a restriction because to protect the people in that country because of the poverty. Next is lastly dealing with governmental trade influences. When companies face possible losses because of import competition, They have several options, four of which stand out. One, move operations to another country. This is when facing import competition, companies can move abroad. Concentrate on market in in niches that attract less international competition, or seek other market niches. 3. Adopt internal innovation such as greater efficiency or superior products, or means make domestic output competitive. And lastly, 4. Try to get governmental protection, or try to get protection. This each options entails cost and risk. Nevertheless, companies undertake different ones.